And we're back with the final installment on the PowerShell introduction. In this one I get into some of the more complicated features of it, and I will be referencing a lot of articles. Okay, the next one we have here is get Mr. PS version. Well, it's not really Mr. What happens, this was made by Mike Robbins. This is an example of a function, and he put his initials in there so it wouldn't be confused with the regular get PS version. And the way that he does this is, the reason he does this is that way he does not accidentally end up using some reserved words, which can cause problems. Alright, we run this program. It runs the one command that it has in its code block, and it gets done. You have more information on functions in the article that I provided you. And functions are what PowerShell calls its subroutines. Now, they're called different things. Sometimes they're called subroutines like they are in the old BASIC and things. PowerShell calls them all functions, whether or not it returns a value or not. Languages like SQL call it a function if it actually returns a value, and a procedure if it does not. Okay, on to decision structures. The first one is the if statement. Here's your source for it up here. And I'm going to say that I have a fruit, and it's basically say, is it an animal, vegetable, or mineral? And since a fruit is neither an animal, vegetable, or mineral, it says I don't know what it is. Up here you see where it actually printed out the code you ran. Here's where it printed out its results. Okay, in addition to the if then else, PowerShell also has a switch statement. And here's a contrast here. This is on their website. Here's an if statement for days of the week, which day of the week it is based on the number. Notice that they're doing a zero-based series here. They're probably doing that because they have some sort of an array or something they're referencing, and those are zero-based in PowerShell. Okay, here's how you do it with an if statement. You have these else ifs, else ifs, else ifs. You don't have an else statement afterwards because it's it's one of the days of the week, it's one of these days. Okay, and this is what it looks like as a switch statement. You say switch on $day, and basically, depending on what it is, you have the result. And run it real quick, it looks like this. You notice you have the double arrows here because this is actually in PowerShell itself. This is not considered a complete command, but there you go. It says the third day is Wednesday. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Technically it's the fourth day, but we're doing a zero-based index. Okay, and so that is how you would do a switch statement. Okay, a for statement. We've already seen the for statement. We used it up there when we were talking about booleans. You also have a for each. A for statement, it works with a number. A for each statement works with a collection of objects. And basically what happens is you want for each, and you have an item in a collection, you want to do something with this. One of the ways that you do this more often is you have strings of text from a text file, and you want to go in and you want to look for a word in it, just like we did the word suburbs in the King James Version. Okay, here's some samples. You have a letter array there. You have it there, and you notice you use $sign for letter array. It notes as an array because you have a series of variables separated by commas. Now, if I run this, it prints each of them out on a line by itself as expected. Okay, the next iteration you have is a while, which is while something is true. Now, the thing about the while statement is that while something is true, if it is never true to start with, this will not run. It will blow right through it. Just for grins, let's see what this one does. Okay, and notice that I never did define value, so since I defined it, it started it out as 0 automatically. That's why 0 is considered false, because it's false that I actually initialized it. Okay. Now you have the while loop, then you have a do while loop and a do until loop. Okay, the difference between the while loop and the do while loop is the while loop may or may not run the first time. The do while loop always executes at least once, and the do until always executes once. The do while is you loop something while something is true. The do until is you loop until something becomes true. Like end of file was a common one. Okay, we looked a little bit at arrays. That's what one looks like. If you want to have an array of one thing by itself, you precede it with a comma. That way it's not a scalar. Okay, here's the reference for hash tables. And that's what it looks like they are. That's one of the things that you have available in PowerShell. Okay, the last but not least, we have the PowerShell gotchas. And John Cook has a good article on those. And one thing about it, you try to run PowerShell, it will not run a script unless you set it up to run a script. And you use set execution policy to do that. So if you have a brand new install of PowerShell, it may not run until you do that. Okay, PowerShell requires // to run a script in the current directory. We've been living in the Linux world, and that's a carryover from that. Okay, don't forget that PowerShell uses .eq and -eq and -gt for comparison operators. It does not use the equal sign. We kind of showed that before. Okay, the backtick rather than the slash mark, I've mentioned that before. That's what it uses, the escape characters, so you can have backtick N for a new line, backtick T for tab. Okay, and the reason that is Windows allows backslashes as path operators, that'd be just totally confusing. Okay, and what happens with the function arguments? Just remember, you face them with spaces, not commas. Like you'd want to put parentheses around and put commas around them, because that's the context in a lot of languages. That does not work in PowerShell. Okay, last gotcha I will tell you about is that in PowerShell, every line is a pipeline. So if you don't do anything with a variable, if you just state a variable, it's going to print it out into the console. That could be a little bit confusing at first. Okay, that ends the PowerShell intro. Hope you enjoyed it.